What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Pioneer video. And with Halloween a month and a half away, I figured now is the perfect time to be talking about one of the spookiest decks to be playing in the Pioneer format. And while I don't think it's necessarily scary in the way that, the cards definitely get you creeped out or whatever, it's scary how much damage and how much synergy this deck does put together. By going from just a single color deck in, most cases to turning into three colors and honestly having a lot of legs and being a deck that has, to me at least, always seemed pretty good in the format. So today, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at Bant Spirits for the Pioneer format. One. So here we have the Bant Spirits deck piloted by, not even going to attempt to say that username because I've tried like 15 different times off camera to find a pronunciation that I would be okay with. That would mean that I would not butcher it, and it's still butchered. So I'm sorry to this user, but they did take the deck to a 6-1 finish, good enough for third place or the semifinals of the Pioneer Challenge this past Sunday. Before we get too deep into the deck, I would like to thank everyone that has subscribed to the channel and showed support through the past almost, I mean, coming up on a year. I mean, next March will be a year, so probably about 8, 9 months, just off the top of my head. Anyway, I definitely don't want to downplay that support. That's been, crucial in me continuing to make videos and push out content. So thank you all for that and continuing to keep me doing this. With that being said, if you are not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so you can help me continue to make videos such as this, other types of discussion videos centering around like the modern and pioneer format, and of course ringing the notification bell so you know when those videos are uploaded. There is a link in the description of this video to the Discord server, so if you have not already done so, or if you're interested in just talking magic and things like that, please feel free to follow that link, join the server. Awesome time to, always a good time talking about, these wizard squares that we like tossing around. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at Bant Spirits. And I will say that there's a single caveat, at least to me, in calling this Bant Spirits because this deck plays like 5 green cards in the main deck and none on the sideboard. So essentially, it's Bant so it can play Collected Company and, in this case, a Toski Bearer Secrets. Toski being very good in this deck as we get to the creatures. But I guess I should explain Collected Company. So you can't actually get Toski from Collected Company. Collected Company says that you look at the top 6 cards of your library, you put 2 creature cards from with converted mana cost 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, and you put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So essentially, with Collected Company, you could spend 4 mana to get potentially 6 mana worth of creatures in play. What we are doing with this is essentially beating down our opponent with very efficient threats. You have cards like Mausoleum Wanderer that can get bigger when other spirits come into play. Has evasion in flying, so you're able to kind of go over the top of your opponent. Um, and you can sacrifice it to counter instant sorcery spell unless its controller plays X, where X is its power. You also have Spectral Sailor, which is just a 1/1 flying uh, spirit with flash that eventually you can just start pumping your extra mana into just drawing cards, which, in the late game can be very good because essentially Spectral Sailor can be 5 mana for a 1/1 flash flyer that draws a card, which can be pretty good. As we move up, like Rattle Chains offers protection. It's another flash threat with flying, so it does have evasion. When it enters the battlefield, target spirit you control gains hexproof, and you can cast spirit spells that add flash, which kind of opens the floodgates for cards like Remorseful Cleric, Selfless Spirit, and all your non-flash spirits. These ones in particular being very good because you can kind of catch your opponent, specifically like your Greasefang opponent with Remorseful Cleric, and even like some of your like control opponents with like Selfless Spirit, just getting the flashes into play. Sack it, give your team indestructible, and watch as they cry into their hands because their uncounterable Supreme Verdict essentially got countered. It killed a 2/1. Um, of course, these creatures just being very good, even if they don't have flash, just flash being the added bonus from Metal Chains. You have cards like Shacklegeist that, while it can only block creatures with flying, is a 2/2 flyer for 2. And you can tap 2 untap spirits to tap target creature you don't control, which, if you ever get into a board stall, essentially you just start stacking up spirits, tapping them, tapping down your opponent's team, and then going for the big swing to try to kill them. You have cards like Supreme Phantom that are 2 mana 1/3s with flying that give your other spirit creatures +1/+1. Appearing Eagle gives your other flying creatures +1/+1, and as you've probably sensed the theme here, all of your creatures have flying, minus Toski, obviously. But Appearing Eagle essentially getting to do this, have like the same Lord effect as Supreme Phantom does, just a little bit more spread out, maybe in the off chance that you actually have another creature with flying. We have Catilda, Dawnheart Martyr, and of course Catilda's Rising Dawn on the backside. Uh, Flying lifelink protection from vampires, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and/or enchantments. Of course, to play the other side, you have to pay 5, and essentially it gives that buff to whatever creature that you decide to enchant. Um, Pretty good card. Definitely gets bigger, scales up. No way of really giving a trample, but of course, like when you combine this with cards like Shacklegeist, you just get to make Catilda, super big by playing a bunch of dudes, and then getting to hit with this, taking a chunk of your opponent's life total, ending the game, or just making any of your flyers lethal. Skyclave Apparition is essentially removal on a body, up to converted mana cost 4 or less. And of course, when it leaves, your opponent gets a illusion token where X is the converted mana cost of the exiled card. Still, even with like that drawback essentially of giving your opponent a token, Skyclave Apparition does get rid of some annoying permanents and does give you a little bit of game against the cards that kind of stop you from putting cards into play with Collected Company. If your opponent were to play them in the main deck and even in the sideboard games as well, Skyclave Apparition does put in that work. Spell Queller is a interesting card. As I was saying earlier, like you could flash in a Selfless Spirit with if you have Rattle Chains on board and kind of like blank your opponent's Supreme Verdict. Well, Spell Queller is another way that you can actually play around Supreme Verdict because Spell Queller, when it enters the battlefield, you exile target spell with converted mana cost 4 or less, and when it leaves, your opponent may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So even though it's essentially like countering the spell, you're removing the spell from the stack, you're not actually countering it, which means that Spell Queller, in lack of a better term, or just in the terms I'm going to put it, counters the Supreme Verdict. Obviously, if your opponent's able to remove the Spell Queller, then they will just get to do it anyway. But it does kind of give you a turn and gives you some buffer against those kinds of decks so that you can, play around wraths a little bit more freely, just getting to play this kind of instant speed game, with your other flyers and things like that. Of course, Toski, the spell can't be countered. It's indestructible. Whenever it attacks each combat, and whenever a creature you control deals combat to a player, draw a card. This is a backbreaking. If you're able to just kind of like play at instant speed with like your threats, and then just slam a Toski and hit your opponent, you're drawing 3 cards off the first one. If your opponent wraths, like you still have a Toski, and Toski is going to attack, deal 1 point of damage, and draw you an extra card. So eventually you're going to be able to overwhelm your opponents and things like that. And that's kind of where I think this deck can excel. I mean, playing 1 copy of Toski is, to me, a very minimal impact with having a lot of upside, I think, to it. Is there going to be times where you collect a company and you hit a Toski? If you play this deck enough, that's probably going to happen. But, in the grand scheme of things, I think it just gives the deck just a little more oomph because again, there is going to be times where you play this card and it draws 4 or 5 cards, and even if your opponent manages to deal with Toski and then deal with the subsequent board, you're going to have so many cards in hand that you're basically going to be able to rebuild and force your opponent to do the same thing over again. The mana base, because we already went over Collected Company, Adhikar Waste, new from Dominaria Rising, or Dominaria United, excuse me. Uh, it's the blue-white pain land. If you can one tap for colorless, you can. If not, you can pay, essentially have a deal of damage to add white or blue. Bark Channel Pathway, one of the green-blue pathway lands. Botanical Sanctum comes to play untapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands, the blue-green fast land. Branch Loft Pathway being the green-white one. Breeding Pool, Aganjo being able to kind of be like this utility land where you can use it as a removal spell, or obviously just play it as a land, plays 4 mana. You have Hollowed Fountains, Hengegate Pathway. You have 1 Otawara, essentially getting to play like that flex roll, just getting to bounce something. an island and temple garden. Surprisingly, playing a lot of like green mana symbols in this deck. Green lands that tap for mana, and kind of getting to get away with it because a lot of them do tap for blue mana. In the sideboard, Portable Holes, Lofty Denials, Spirit of the Labyrinth, Unlicensed Hearse, Extraction Specialist, another Catilda, Rydane, God of the Worthy, and Skyclave Apparition. These cards, I think, being very typical for a deck that plays white. I mean, Spirit of the Labyrinth against, like, say, the Phoenix deck can hinder it very much because it essentially turns cards like Treasure Cruise into do nothing spells unless they are able to deal with the Spirit of the Labyrinth. Also, notably, a Spirit, which of course is the theme of the deck. So you do get to kind of protect it with cards like Rattle Chains and things like that. Lofty Denial essentially just turns into counter spells, considering all of your creatures have flying. So as long as you have a creature in play, Lofty Denial most of the time is going to feel like a counter spell. Portable Hole is just another way of getting rid of like problematic permanents. Definitely lets you have a little bit more game, I would say, against like mono red and things like that. For the fact that like you just get to play this, kind of like pace their threats, and then eventually you can get down some of your higher toughness uh, spirits, and then are able to kind of stabilize the board from there. Extraction Specialist is a card that gets hit off of Collected Company, and in a way can get you 3 creatures off of like a Collected Company. You know, you're obviously trading creatures, things like that. Extraction Specialist can bring it back. It is not a spirit, so it's not going to get buffed by any of like the lords or anything like that, but you do get something with a value 2 or less, so you're able to bring back like a Supreme Phantom or even like another Selfless Spirit. The creature, if I can find it, the creature cannot attack, block. Yeah, the creature cannot attack or block, but you get a 3/2 with lifelink, you know, pretty good against like the aggressive decks, getting to buffer your life total. Also, a bonus of getting hit off a Collected Company. Catilda, we already went over her. Redane definitely is something that can mess with your opponent, mainly like your Phoenix player definitely messes with like the Lotus combo decks and things like that. So definitely a card that is worth playing. Only a one of, and again, just another card where you have the added bonus of hitting off Collected Company, and of course the Forced Skyclave Apparition because we never leave home without 4 of these bad boys. And that's the deck list. Bant Spirits, essentially kind of like the way that I feel about the Mono Blue deck. Obviously, I think this deck has a lot more that can go right for it. I think can close the door a lot more quickly than like the blue decks with the uh, I guess the disadvantage of kind of getting to either go all in on one creature and having like less of the counter magic. You know, you're kind of like reacting more to what your opponent's doing while also trying to be proactive as well, you know, and like it has its ups and downs, you know, its pros and cons and things like that. But Banned Spirits, nevertheless, I think is still a very good deck, and I think is a deck that is worth playing. And worth trying out as well. I mean, obviously, players are doing well; they're finding success with the deck, so I think it's definitely a deck that's worth looking into further. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video of Bant Spirits. I definitely enjoyed it a lot, considering I love collected company decks. Definitely have not made any money off of collected company decks in terms of like tournament success and things like that, but I always like seeing a good collected company deck in a format. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, of course, leave a like, share the video with your friends and stuff, and get them to subscribe to the channel as well as ring the notification bell so you know when videos like this go live. Trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year. Totally possible. We're like 10 away as they're recording this video, so hopefully we can just kind of like crush it out of the park, you know, by the end of this year. But that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.